last week on the Al Nicoletti Show.
Without further ado, let's bring him on the show. Nick.
Hey.
What's up, man?
It's so easy for us to default to no. Employee comes up with an idea. No. One thing I've been catching myself doing is after I say no, I'm like, that was actually a really good idea. And what I try to do is I try to own my mistakes. Earlier I said that wasn't a good idea. I was wrong. That was a great idea. Why don't we do that?
That really gets into a whole lot of discipline.
What are some of the tools for discipline? And I think it's awareness that you're undisciplined. The hardest part is realizing that one of your principles that you live by isn't serving you anymore. I think one of my secret sauces might be action taking. And you don't get experience unless you take action.
I feel like I can really relate to that.
Did you know you almost learn nothing when things go perfect?
I 100% agree with you.
People want to close deals, but they don't always know what it takes to work the lead. I think they want the lead to be like a scratch off. And I can tell you right now, if the seller wants you to speed up, they are going to let you know.
You nailed it.
Focus on what's working for you. Stay in your lane and celebrate every chance you get, because you know what? No one else is going to tell anybody what you do for a living.
Always so fun having you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
What a great episode that was with Nick last week. And it's always great to see the recaps and what you missed if you weren't able to catch that episode. So make sure you go back and check that out. And if you want to catch all the guests that are on the Al Nicoletti Show, you scan the QR code with the link tree and you'll get all the content where we are on social media. And you'll find all my content on probate, education, business tips, and anything that we're talking about on the show, maybe show micro. And you'll see the code in the corner while we're doing the show. So you'll see that there. And tonight we have another amazing guest on the Al Nicoletti Show, Rafael Cortez. He's going to light it up. It's going to be a great one. And you're going to love him because he's not just bringing his education with real estate, but he's bringing it with the psychology world. And this blew my mind when I saw him on a family mastermind Zoom call, really diving deep into psychology. And I was like, whoa. And I was on the road at that time watching it. So it was really, really interesting. And now I got to do my opening thoughts. Opening thoughts with Al Nicoletti is, when you're training your team, it's very important to have understanding with proactive learning versus reactive learning. And so what do I mean by that? So my team was working on a project today, and it was a little bit more complicated than usual. And so when we were working on it, the team just stopped on the file and said, hey, we don't really know what's going on. We have to ask you some questions on it. And normally I would say, okay, let's talk about it. Then you can do it. I said, you know what? What I want you to do is give it a try. Go do it. Go make your best effort, right? If you're going to get a grade, take the B, right? Make the effort on it. And then when we go over it, then you will actively learn what you missed, what you need to do better next time. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are not doing that with their teams, and the teams are now reactive to what the person's explaining or what the leader's explaining. And I think there has to be a new retraining. I'm sure Rafael will even talk about that with psychology, but you got to do a retraining with your team. Show them more proactive, make them think. You want them to think, and then you then explain whether it's right or wrong. So I think that's really important for a lot of the teams that are out there, especially in real estate or business for that matter. And I hope that's helpful for everybody. I'm excited. I got my pen. I got my paper out. I'm ready to take notes. And we always love the fan interaction out there. If you're watching live, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, we love all the fans. We want you to ask questions, interact. We're going to make sure we show it on the screen. And if you got that question, we'll ask Rafael tonight. So I'm ready to do this. Let's rock this thing. Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate, and always bring in the best in the game. Whether it's real estate, mindset, entrepreneur, you name it, we always want to bring on the best that can bring the best value to you, the best knowledge on how you can take your company to the next level. On my show, I got Rafael Cortez, super investor out in Arizona and crushing the real estate market all over the country. But especially, I love how he's doing it in Arizona and Florida. He's a killer and he's really smart when it comes to psychology. And we're going to dive in on that tonight. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show. Raf, what's going on, man?
What is going on, dude? It's so good being here, man. That was quite an intro. I loved it.
Thank you. Hey,
Thanks for having me, bro.
I love that you're on the show. I love when I get to see you at Family Mastermind. I love when I get to see you at all because you bring so much knowledge, so much education and passion. So, Raf, what we really want to dive into on tonight is the psychology and what's going through the mind of what entrepreneurs should be thinking when they see different situations in real estate, but what's going through that psychology mind. And, the first thing I really want to cover with you is understanding the human patterns, the basic human patterns, and how we're all algorithms and what that looks like. Let's dive in on that.
Whoa. Okay. So there's a lot of things to unwrap right there, right? First off, it depends on what setting you're in. I mean, right now, I think we're talking to a lot of, if we bring it back, a little bit, we're talking to entrepreneurs, we're talking to a lot of people in real estate, a lot of people obviously reaching out for services in Florida, and it just an overall competitive environment, right? What happens, like one of the biggest things that I see, and this comes from students, it comes from people who are way further along the journey than I am, so people that I look up to, and the story is always the same. The loudest voice is always going to be the internal voice. The loudest voice, the loudest thing, just pounding our brains is going to be our own self-talk, right? We are in a space where that self-talk, a lot of times, is the only thing we have, right? Entrepreneurship is lonely. It really is. That's why we gravitate towards masterminds, and we all get super excited when we get to, talk to a bunch of crazy people just like us when we go to family, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just conversations that, normally you wouldn't get to have unless somebody understands the, the struggles, the context, the battles, and everything that goes into it, right? So I think to kind of, prep the stage for the whole mindset portion of it is I think we have to understand where we're coming from, right? And that's big. I mean, that is huge. Of course, you have experiences that shape the way that we see things, or perspective along the way, right? So I like to think that we're wired in a couple of different ways, right? Out of the box. So we come out of the box.
Just bring it. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. So out of the box, it's like we come out, out of the womb and whatnot. We're already pre-wired. We have this, this set of just attitudes, behaviors, and that's why you see babies, right? Like it's pretty interesting. But look at a baby. Look at 6 months old, 7 months old. Oh, this baby's a happy baby. That baby's an angry baby. That baby, like, they don't know what's going on in life. It's not like their life experiences can actually give them context yet. They just they express themselves and relate, and it's like the purest form of what our individual psychological display is going to be, right? So there's certain attitudes and behaviors that we come in with strengths, right? Call them behavioral strengths. Then as we progress through life, right, we get start going to school, depending on the type of family that we're in. We're in a good family, we're in a sketchy family where we were not taken care of, we were taken care of. So all of that stuff starts to create ideas and just modes of response, right? We call them engrams, and those will pave the way on how we think and how we perceive things going forward, right? So now we have two things happening. We have two things happening. We have that natural wiring that we had there, which is being altered by the environment, right? So it's hard to peg or to see or define, right? Or like where, okay, this person is this, without having some context or understanding as to, okay, what's the background? What has the experience of life brought this person in the past, and how are they going to understand and process information? So when we're talking about like behavioral profiles, it's really a loaded question. There's a lot behind it. I teach a couple of trainings on intensive trainings on behavioral strengths. You've seen a portion of one of them.
Oh, yeah.
And and the most basic way to kind of explain it is going back to, I like to bring it back to the disc profile. There's a lot of and I'll explain what that is here in a
Yeah,
second.
because we really have to dive in on that for sure.
Yeah, so there's and I think once you get even a gist of how to understand people that way, it becomes an entire process of communication. It's not even, a psychological, warfare, or trying to read minds or anything. Like, it's about understanding. It's about communication, right? It's about making
Yeah.
sure that we're trying to convey whatever we want to say, whatever we want, to somebody else, in a way that that other person is going to understand it.
And by the way, that's really
Yeah.
important, because if you're really trying to get into deals or talk to people or negotiate, these are the things that are going to help you to take it to that level.
1,000%. It applies everywhere. It
Yeah.
applies for real estate professionals, for attorneys. It applies to wives, to husbands, to, once you have that, that understanding of people process information, it's almost hard to get pissed off. I mean, I like to think of it that way. It's like, because you see where they're coming from, right? You understand where they're coming from, and then you can empathize a lot easier. So I guess to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of some, the pragmatic, stuff that I talked about on that last presentation was, I like to go back, and there's a lot of behavioral assessments. One thing, we see often when we're hiring, right? What kind of profile are you? Are you, a maverick? Are you, this and that? They're all derived from the DISC profile. So the DISC is it's 4 different, main or pillars of behavioral patterns. The D stands for driven or directive, right? The I stands for interactive. The S stands for steady or supportive. And then the C starts for compliance and calculating, right? So you can, kind of address them and peg them that way, right? That alone is going to give you a lot of context into, okay, this person is very analytical. I mean, they're very calculating on everything they do. So they may fit a C profile.
Right.
So when we start to kind of, see things, and like each one has their own color. So if you haven't done any research on DISC, I suggest that you do. It's a really, really good tool, right? It's not just a matter of, learn a party trick or something like that. People ask me like, what is that person? Can you read them? Like, yes, I can read minds. All I'm doing really is just, it's reading behavioral models. That's all. But it becomes,
Ralph, let me ask you this. So how do you tie in this DISC profile with sellers? How do you leverage that?
So it's one, it's going to be like everything else, right? Repetition through practice. When you start to understand what each one of the profiles kind of brings, and again, like each one of those profiles is going to be an algorithm. For example, you have things that, and I'll do a very light overview of a 30,000 foot view of each one. Let's go to a D profile, the driver profile.
Okay.
Or dominating, also known as a dominating directive profile. The first reaction, the first default response, and think about default responses, right? So the go-to response is going to be anger. Somebody who's a high D, whenever they're put into a state of stress, they're going to react in an angry manner. That's the wiring. It's not even, there's not a lot of thought process, creative, or critical thinking behind it or anything. Put yourself in the seat of, I don't know, driving to the freeway, right? Somebody's, high driver, a high, directive, somebody cuts them off. Like the instant reaction is to get mad, get upset,
Right.
to get angry, right? So that's a default reaction. For the interactives, right? The default reaction is optimism. So they tend to be very optimistic people. Like, oh, hopefully he won't do it again. Same scenario, right? Oh, hopefully they won't do it. I'm glad they didn't hit me. It's like, so something optimistic. So when you understand and you're walking to a seller appointment or, a client appointment, period, right? Because this really transfers across.
Right.
And you understand the through body language, through the way they communicate, through mannerisms and everything, where they fall into those categories, it's easy to understand how you're doing in that conversation, right?
Right. Because you can peg
exactly
what that is.
Yeah. So and I'll kind of go into the some of the reading of how this happens, right? The S profile is the supportive profile. Under stress, they shut down. So they become this wall, right? The biggest fear is being taken advantage of, and they have this need for security 24/7, right? So a lot of times anytime like somebody's put in a state of stress and they're under that profile, they're going to go back to security questions, security conversations. What does this look like in the future? How does that pace out? Where do I end up? And you'll see it. Like you there's no way to not see it when you're having that conversation. The C profile, the calculating profile, it's one of the biggest fears is going to be the lack of performance on their end, right? So you have somebody who's a high analytical. They some of the biggest things that hit them is not performing to their own standards. A lot of times they can deal with the outside heat, the haters or whatever, right? But self-performing and then not performing up to par with their standards, their own standards, that really gets to them. And you see that kind of stuff in conversation. Now what happens? We have scripts, we have seller scripts, we have whatever, right? Like there's always kind of blueprints to go off of in any given industry. But I think what really kind of falls by the wayside is understanding the other person beyond those scripted conversations that people are having on a regular basis. When you start reading people, when you start understanding what are they doing right now at a behavioral level, are they shutting down, are they opening up, is that what does that translate to, right?
Right.
So when you talk about behavioral profiles, it applies everywhere across the board, right? And there are, again, certain things that we can read through the conversation as we're going through these conversations that are going to give you an idea of how you're doing in that conversation. So if you hit a wall, right? I don't know, say that somebody shuts down on you and you don't understand why they stop talking all of a sudden. Okay, cool. I mean, that's a red flag, right? What do? You start stepping backwards from whatever you said right there and then navigate around it. And it like, even in closings and negotiations and stuff like that. I mean, at this point, I've done over 1,200 deals. I've sat, and I've sat across a lot of tables with a lot of people, right? And it's really not about having that that confrontational conversation, right, to negotiate something. It's really about, okay, how do I get to the bottom of the real issue and navigate to this conversation this way in a manner that they're gonna get the point, right? So
Interesting.
yeah.
So you can really leverage these things in sales and closing deals by just being able to identify this. And then is there another level after this? So like once you make the identification, what's the next level to like getting into the negotiation? Or do you already know what that pattern's going to be with that person?
No. So you have, I mean, good question. At this point, you have, for example, I'm sitting down with a seller, right? This is one of the first things that I'm going to do. And it's interesting because you can identify all these things through body language. I mean, it really takes, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds of talking to somebody to kind of, have a decent idea of what, where they fall into each one of these categories, right? So now you have the category, and then you have the default responses, because we all have default responses. And so what to kind of prep for, right? Like in the conversation. Okay, if I push too hard, if I drop this, the response that I can expect is going to be, shutting down. It's not going to be necessarily getting mad because that it doesn't fit their profile, right?
Yeah.
Again, there's context and experiences and all that stuff that shape and have influence in it. That's why navigation is important, right?
Yeah.
But you figure that portion out. The next thing is going to be, I mean, I can't emphasize this enough, man. It's active listening. That's
a tough concept for people.
Man, it sounds like I'm in kindergarten every time I say it, right? But there's 3 levels of listening. It has to be intentional. A lot of times we just want to listen. Well, let me break them down. Like level 3 listening is somebody saying something and then you're absolutely not paying attention. Like you're just, zoned out. You're waiting for them to stop talking so you can say whatever you want to say. That's level 3 listening. It's very, very, it's not even superficial. It's like up in the clouds, type of listening. And that type of listening, when you see it, we see it a lot when people are going off scripts, right? Okay, I'm gonna say this, and then they're gonna say blah blah this, and then I'm gonna continue on to the next script, next portion of the script, and they're like, didn't hear what I said. I'm not interested. Like this is so okay. Well, one, and then you move on to the next conversation. I'm sure you've had VAs or I don't know, somebody call you about a sale. They want to sell you something, and they go through this. That's level 2 listening.
Yeah.
Level 2 listening.
Used to it.
Yeah. Level 2 listening is when we're paying enough attention just to come back with a rebuttal, to still say what we want to say. We haven't really thought it through. There's no exploration of the entire context. You know what I mean? So it's level 2 listening, right? So again, when we're studying rebuttals, and if they tell me this, I'm gonna spit this back out. It's almost like we're looking for those cues, right? But we're not really digging for additional information beyond that scripted conversation a lot of times, right? And it's unfortunate, man, because it's at least in my space, right? I do a lot of wholesale. I do a lot of real estate investments, a lot of wholesale, a lot of fix and flip, sub 2 and buy and hold, everything under the moon when it comes to real estate, right? The 100% of the time, the reason people sell to us is going to be because we take the time to find what underlying issues are really happening. Like it's something that we just drive home. Okay, so you can't do that with level 2 listening. Those are rebuttals. Those are I don't know, you go to a car dealership, they'll give you level 2 listening just to give you enough so they have enough ammo to come back with their own point and drive that through, right? We see it in arguments. I mean, if you're arguing with your spouse, a lot of times it's heated conversation. Like I'm just going to be listening for the things that I can use to throw them right back out, right? So you're paying yeah, exactly, you're paying attention, but it's very selective. It's a very selective type of attention. And then level 1 listening, it's when we see ourselves as spectators, right, to the entire conversation. Okay, this is my point. This is what I come to offer. This is the thing that I want to talk about, right? And then you put that on a shelf for a second while the other person is talking, and then when they say their thing, you take another second or so to actually think about it and process info. It's like, okay, is there a point there? So you have, but I mean, you were talking about being proactive earlier, or you were talking about being proactive, right? That's exactly what it entails. Like it entails, paying that special type of attention. And as you're going through these conversations, you read through them, right? I mean, I can give you example after example. For example, body language is a big thing, right? So if I'm saying something and I'm talking to somebody who's a high S's, or the supportive type of profile, or the steady profile, they're not very they don't move around too much. They're very methodical and kind of control when it comes to body language and that sort of thing, right? But one thing that it's easy to pick up is going to be pacifying movements. Pacifying movements are going to tell you a lot about the type of profile the person is, right? Pacifying movement. Think about when you were a little kid. I know I had a blanket. I had like a little blanket I carried everywhere. Yeah. Like, I mean, either you have a blanket or a teddy bear or I don't know, something, right? But it's a pacifying movement. We learned that from birth because you have pacifiers, and then you're crying, they put a pacifier in your mouth, and then you stop crying, right? So we're getting wired with those neurons as we grow older. So we can't walk around with a pacifier in our mouth, right? And in a given time of stress now, because we're adults, and it'd be just I don't know, weird. To each their own, right? But I don't know, I don't do it. However, there's always going to be pacifying movements. There's going to be things that we do. One thing that it's easy to pick up is when people start kind of hugging themselves in the arms and kind of rubbing their neck, doing this kind of deal right here. That's a pacifying movement. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're absolutely stressed out or angry or but there's some type of uneasiness going on. So if you said something and somebody automatically reverted to a pacifying movement, think about what that was, and then backtrack from it, right? Because your point is not going to get across that way. It's only going to escalate.
So, for example, in that kind of moment, but like with sales, or you're across the table with the seller, as soon as you see that kind of movement, Are you saying that like you've reached maybe like the pain point or the uncomfortable
Yeah.
point, and that's where you then say, ah, I hit something, but they may not react verbally, but they're reacting physically, and that's where you then zone in on that topic and go, wait, tell me more about
Yeah.
this, and that's going to drive home
Or
more of that
or
reaction.
or I will acknowledge it, right? I'll be okay. I mean, I can feel or I can see that it's somewhat uncomfortable to you. I mean, if it's okay, can you tell me a little bit more about it? If not, I completely understand and respect it. But it's important to me. What I found it, it's important to acknowledge when something like that happens, because you hit one of those benchmarks. And again, the whole thing, it's not about manipulation, it's not about any of that, it's about understanding. It's about being able to empathize at a whole another level. Why? Because you understand that when you say something this way and a person reacts that way, like this is what they means to them, right? Based on
Yeah.
perspective. So
But let's go back to active listening, because like I think I'm level 1 right now, right?
okay.
Because we're going back and forth, and I'm listening to you, and then I'm responding to what you're saying. So
Yeah.
with active listening, um, by doing that more, you will be able to pick up more cues, pain points, uh, thing. It's not all about the money in the deal, but sometimes it's what matters to that seller, that person that you're working with, negotiating with. That's not money. That's
Right.
family, uh, time with others. Maybe they're trying to buy something, and so you're really trying to get that listening down. And I don't
Yeah.
think enough people do that more. I see that all the time when I'm doing consults, when I'm having meetings. I'm always level 1, right? Because I'm trying to hear everything, right? But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't put that into practice. How can entrepreneurs start putting that more into practice so that they can just really hone in on those pain points and pick up more deals?
There's no magic button. I mean, it's all about awareness and intention. Really, it truly is. Right. You first off have the awareness of where you fall. Like which I mean, for example, I'm a high driver, and my secondary is a high I. So I'm a driver interactive, right? A lot of entrepreneurs kind of tend to be on that uh, space because we're quick to action. I mean, good at creating relationships and that sort of thing, right? So we're always going. However, where I drop the ball a lot of the times is on the details, right? And so be aware of or where you stand, like what your natural strengths are, right? More importantly, be aware of your natural weaknesses. For example, one of my like just apps. I mean, this is something that I've intentionally worked on, has been patience. I'm not a I've never been a patient person.
You look like a patient person.
I'm really not like, no.
You're not. You're more impatient. I can't
Yeah,
tell.
no, that's a learned skill. Like it really has been a learned, like a learned skill through just through time and understanding, really, because it doesn't serve me to move at the pace that I always move. Right. And again, like I had the awareness of, like when I'm doing this and I'm thinking about 1,000 other things, I'm neglecting to pay attention to the people around me and their needs. You have employees. I mean, we don't have to go that far. Think about family, right? So it's a matter of one of the things that I'm working on right now is being present in the now.
I
Right.
like
I'm always
this.
forward
Yes,
thinking,
I
always,
like this.
overachievers, and that sort of thing, always forward thinking. And it's hard to be present, with family in meetings and whatever, when we're thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. Like that's the natural, I gravitate naturally to that thing, right? But I'm aware of it now. And it's something that I, over the last couple of years, I've been, more intentional about dialing, be more present, be more
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it really starts with that, right? Like understand your weaknesses as as an individual, where okay, I mean, I may not be the best person at listening to people. Bullshit, work on that for a little bit. you you
Yeah.
know and pay attention to where you're missing out on, where you're not showing up on a daily basis because you don't pay attention to that particular weakness. I'm not saying spend a lot of time kind of fine tuning your weaknesses and whatnot. Like, no, absolutely, we got to work within our strengths, but all these things are just important to be aware of. because sooner or later it's gonna come back to me. I mean, you said it earlier, right? Like, oh, I realized this, and then you went back to your team.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You retrain.
Yeah.
If you're not aware of what's going on, you're not gonna be able to retrain yourself. So that starts with that. It really
I love
does.
your whole point on present. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's as an entrepreneur, every day, high volume, lots of things going on. And then you're thinking about all the other things that you didn't do that you got to get with your team and that you want to do personally. And then like when you're with family or you're with the situation, like you feel like sometimes you're not there. And I 100% agree with you. That's something I've even worked on in the last year. Just really being present when you're at the restaurant, you're at the restaurant. When you're at the movies, you're at the movies. Nothing else comes in. Don't check anything. And that is a huge point. And also, let me say this about patience and impatience.
Yeah.
Of course, working on patience is definitely a thing. I 100%. But also, being impatient can sometimes be a blessing as an
Oh,
entrepreneur
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
that trait right there can actually help you become more high volume because then you're thinking like this, right? Because you don't have time to be on the phone for an hour. I can't do hour-long calls anymore. Anybody that knows me, it's either 15 or 30 minutes, we're out. So I love that you brought that up because, for sure, patience is a thing, but impatience, some people think it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. I mean, I guess everything in excess, right? Like can be deemed a bad thing. But it's. I mean, I think it creates a good counterbalance. Like think about it this way, right? I mean, think about talking about mindset. It's I don't. I don't subscribe to the balanced lifestyle, the work life balance, because I've tried it. I try to have good work-life balance, and what happens is that when I'm at work, I'm feeling guilty because I should be with my family because I'm not balancing that out. And then when I'm with my family, I'm thinking about 1,000 things at work. Right? Like that whole balance thing is. I mean, for me, it just didn't pan out. Like it's a story I keep telling myself, right? However, counterbalance is something that I can live with. Counterbalance to me, it's something different. It's something that takes me out of that space, and it has to be it has to have enough pull, right, to bring me up to the other side. So if I'm spending a lot of time on the work side of things, okay, what's going to be counterbalanced for my own, for my own health, for my own, well-being, right, for my, for my time with my family and everything. It's about seeing it that way. And yeah, some days are heavy on the, on the work side, and other, 3-4 days are heavy on the family side, and it's okay, right? It's a matter of just kind of navigating the entire thing. It comes. I mean, the reason I bring that up is because of. I mean, you were talking about patience, right? Being impatient is it's also a thing. If you're overly patient, you have to counterbalance that. I mean, that's where procrastination, analysis paralysis comes from too. So
yeah, no, it's just a fascinating topic when
Right.
talking about patience, right? The patience is a hard thing for the impatient people,
Yeah.
but it actually, it takes time and you'll get it.
Yeah.
But Rafael, I really want to cover the body language portion, right? Because this is, there's different cues, there's different movements, but really diving deeper on the body language and how you can leverage those things when you're sitting across the table, or you're maybe you're somewhere and you're able to pick that up and say, oh wait, what's this pain point? What are the different types of body language movements we're looking for when you're doing negotiations or you're doing sales?
Some of the most evident stuff, and so we have micro gestures. Micro gestures are harder to pick up. They happen really quick, and they're very, very small. And the interesting thing is that it's very hard to control your body language and control a conversation. It's hard to have, like, you can't have your mind on both. I mean, that's why, and I'll get into rapport building here in a second, but it's a segue. But some of the most evident things are going to be, is somebody, when you're sitting down across the table from somebody, are they guarded, right? Are they crossing their arms like this, right? I mean, this is it's a sure tell. Like, yeah, exactly. Are they thoughtful? Are they maybe, putting a hand across and then the other one on the brain? I mean, are they being thoughtful about it? Are they open? Is it an open stance? That sort of thing. So, I mean, that's pretty evident, right? One of my favorite ones, and you see this ones at, I mean, we see it all the time. If you pay attention next time you go to family, you'll see it, man. I crack up. But it's the feet. The feet are always going to tell you where somebody's mind wants to go.
What are we looking for?
Where are the feet pointing at?
Oh, where
So
the
you may be standing right in front of somebody else, right? And if their feet are pointing towards, I don't know, the door or the window, their torso may still be facing you, right?
right.
But their feet are going that way. Like, trust me, that's where they want to go. Like, their attention is that way. Like, you lost them. And so if you see that happening, pay attention to that, and then wrap up your conversation real quick, because it's only going to break rapport further, or find a way to bring it back into it.
Is there no way to bring the feet back in?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's, if you hook them, back up on something interesting, right? So if they go from pointing outwards or pointing somewhere else, right? And then you say something, and then, they turn their, and you'll see it all the time, 1,000% all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many, I count this kind of stuff. It's fun to me, right?
For
I
you,
count
yeah,
it.
for sure.
I walk around just looking at this. I'm weird like that, but it's
I'm gonna point my feet at you every time.
every single
Every
bro.
time.
I know you. No, but it's pretty interesting, right? But we can't control the body movements and the thoughts at the same time. It's impossible. And I mean, that's one of the cues that I like to pay attention to the most. Another one, like I mentioned earlier, was pacifying movement. So what happens, right? You see it, you acknowledge it. Oh, okay, the feet are pointing that way. Like the thing is that we don't usually, we can get decent at catching these things, but forget to take action on them, like actually use the information. So if you see somebody who falls into any given profile or whatever, and you see this in a lot in hiring assessments, and they go and take all the tests, and they're this and they're that and whatever.
High this, low that, yeah.
As an employer, I mean, tell me how many times you remember to think back on how best they communicate, right? Like that's the thing. And it's another, like, I feel like it's one of the things that gets there's a lot of research done to just be dropped into a shelf, like after the fact. So anyways, it's a rant because it's a trigger for me.
It's great, man. And then how does this, well, by the way, before I get into rapport building, I used to think that, like, when somebody was facing out, that just was like kind of keeping the conversation open for other people to come in. I was never thinking that with feet, like, being pointed away as being they want to go the other way.
So think about it for a second. You're right. So you're keeping the conversation open. Why? Because you're not absolutely focused on that person. Does that make sense?
Otherwise, they would be right on.
Yeah. Otherwise, they wouldn't care about the outside world. Like, it's you and them in that little bubble.
Yeah. I was thinking about it in a positive way of being open. But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody comes to you with, the map where you're going to be able to find the Holy Grail, like, are you going to pay attention to anything else? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is, right? So there's something else there.
Yeah.
Now, we see it all the time. And I mean, we see it in sales. If you're standing up and in person, I mean, it's like, whoa, you got loads of information there. I mean, those are just, I don't want to, oversaturate it with the body language thing, but those are a few things that we can bank on, right? That are happening, that are not being controlled or registered. We're operated by a subconscious mind at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Consciously, we're having this conversation, but our subconscious is doing a whole bunch of different things. So if you get good at micro movements, hesitations, when somebody's looking over to the left side of the brain, somebody's left brain, that's more of a thoughtful, analytical thinking, right? And the memory recalls come from that side. Creative recalls come from the right side of the brain, that sort of thing. So even eye movement, right? Like, where are you looking at when you're recalling information? Like, what do you normally do? Like,
you're like really into it.
Well, you're into it, but usually you'll see it. You look up, and then people will normally look to the left, right? Like, do a simple like that, type of deal. Pay attention to that kind of stuff, right? So it's you see different micro gestures that come into play, and all the. I mean, there's a whole array of things that we can look for, but body language is one of the biggest things. Now, talking about rapport.
Yeah. So rapport building, right? Like, how does this
The
all tie into that?
So it all absolutely 1,000% ties into rapport building. You've heard about the concept of mirroring, right? I assume, like
Mm.
mirroring, when somebody's mirroring your body language.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Then they're going to do what you're doing.
yeah, one of the things they like in every closer school they teach mirroring. You have to mirror the other person, so you're going to create rapport, and it's fractionally true.
I've actually never been in a class where they talked about mirroring.
Oh, dude, like if you take like any deep sales, type of meeting or type of training, the mirroring is one of the things that comes up. So meaning that you're it's isopraxism, right? But you're mimicking whatever the other person is doing, right? So if they stand up, you stand up. If they cross their arms, you're kind of crossing their arms. I mean, if you make it exactly the same, it's gonna look so weird. But it's a strategy to build rapport. Why? Because the subconscious starts to read, that you're on the same level. Okay, that person is comfortable, I'm gonna be comfortable.
Mm.
Because if that person is comfortable and I'm still all angsty and going 1,000 miles an hour, like we're not vibing at the same thing, right? So we're not registering the same energy, and it's not transferring the same way. Like, you know what I mean? So we have to kind of level the playing field there. So mirroring is very helpful because it also puts you it almost gives you a cue of their state of mind, right? When you mirror somebody's body language. Now, when you understand, or I'm sorry, when you know whether or not you have rapport, is when they are mirroring you.
Ah.
Body language is absolutely subconscious. It's you can't hold a even if you're trying to mirror somebody, like you have all this knowledge in your head and going through it. Like if you're in the middle of a conversation, like you're not gonna be controlling your toes. Like you're in the conversation, you're thinking about the context and everything, right? Our minds are linear. We don't have 5-6 thoughts at the same time. They're all linear. They may be super fast one after another, but they're all linear. We're always thinking about one thing at a time. So what happens is I'll do it. For example, if I don't know exactly where I am in terms of rapport with that person, how engaged, and like I'll do something that kind of breaks the pattern, right? And then I'll do this. I'll grab my ear, or I'll do,
Just randomly.
yeah, exactly. So I'll do something, I'll grab, my ear, I'll do my arm or whatever, right? I'll cross my legs. What that's going to cue is usually a couple of seconds later, if you have good rapport with somebody else, they're going to cross their legs.
Gotta see this in action.
I'm brother, I'm telling you, we're textbooks. We're algorithms. And it really happens because we're communicating at that same, the same frequency, at the same level, with the same intensity, right? When you're super hyped and you go to somebody who's very chill and relaxed, like the communication is going to be off.
Totally.
Rapport alone is going to be super tough to get to, right?
Right.
But when you know whether or not you can have a conversation about football or whatever for 2 hours with somebody. We see it all the time with sellers. I sat down with the seller and 2 hours and they told me a life story, and then they ghosted me the next day. Like, you didn't have rapport. But they told me everything. Well, now maybe they were just an interactive profile. You know what I mean?
I love how you analyze this.
When people start to mirror you, it's coming from their subconscious, right? And it means that you're both on the same playing field, or level.
Interesting.
So
I feel like this all could be super helpful for people that are just doing deals, negotiating, getting into going under contracts, or you're sitting at the table with somebody. I think that's huge. Raf, great stuff right there. I mean, when I saw your presentation with family, I mean, you were showing like the brain, and then you were like diving deeper in the brain, and like the brain was like different colors, and then you were showing like all these arrows. It was like crazy, and how deep you can get into explaining the subconscious and conscious, and like where your mind's at. Like there's a whole thing. I know you told me like you could talk about this for days.
Yeah, some of the trainings I teach are 2-day long, 2-day workshops, and I mean we go deep on that kind of stuff. That was an hour presentation. It's kind of hard to put it all into into a 30-minute combo, but at least I think it plants a seed, right? So if somebody gets excited about it, it's like, okay, cool, you can do some research. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Rolf, before we get to the end, I really want to do this topic with you real quick, which is the hot trends that are happening right now in the market. And I know you were talking about like there's some big things that are bubbling up, maybe in Arizona and Florida. What is happening? What's a hot thing happening right now?
Um, I mean, on the wholesale side, I do a lot of real estate investments. On the wholesale side, everything's kind of, holding steady. It's not, it's getting tougher to get leads via cold calling and text messaging, which, were two of the biggest channels. A lot of that stuff is getting red flagged. So we're tapering, not completely canceling those campaigns, but we're tapering away little by little and then leaning more into inbound traffic, right? I mean, that's one on the wholesaling side. As far as acquisitions and negotiations, we're doing a lot of sub twos. I mean, I've
Really?
been doing sub two since 2012.
Are,
So
are you seeing more than ever lately? Like, are you seeing
yeah,
this? Like,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah. What happens is that, so my conversation back in 2012, 13, 14, when I was, doing, raps back then and everything, I actually had to sit down and go through this entire, um, you know, uh, breaking a paradigm of like, no, you're trying to take advantage of me. There's no way this is legal. Right. So there was that stigma whenever you presented something
hmm,
new. And now, I mean, it's become so mainstream that people hear sub two and it's like, oh, okay, that's that one strategy that I can, sell my house. So now I think like it's just, I mean, the information is more readily available for the consumer out there, for the sellers out there, and it just becomes more of a, an easier tool to use on our end. So people are just more open to it. They're even, strategizing around, sub two. You talk to people in, foreclosures, like, no, I think I want to do a sub two on this property. I
yeah,
was like, okay, awesome. So it's absolutely one of the things that we're leaning into, like, more, especially for the buy and hold portfolio. We're right around, I don't know, 50, I think 55 properties this year so far for buy and hold. And then, I mean,
pretty good.
a bunch of wholesale, properties on top of that and that sort of thing. But yeah, so the wholesale operation is still humming. We're doing a lot of inbound, a mix, a counterbalance between inbound and outbound traffic. See what I did there? And
Yeah,
then and then and then and then leaning a lot more into the sub two stuff. So
yeah. So I've seen the sub two stuff pick up. I mean, I've seen some deals happen
yeah,
with the probates, and it's really interesting seeing that market right now. And I know you were finding a couple deals in
yeah,
the Florida market with that. So hey,
yeah. We have to going on over there.
I love it. I love it. Hey, man, before we wrap up, I just want to go through everybody that's been interacting on tonight. Just, I love seeing who's watching. I know I see Kevin's watching. Chris is watching. Good stuff. Hey, Shelly. I love seeing you on here. Saw Shelly at LPG right after family.
Mm.
Teresa, how you doing? Howdy, everyone. I love it. Hey, there's Michael right there. I love it. Shout out to all my high eyes. Nice. I like that.
There we go. What's up?
I love it. Nisha, absolutely. Teresa says, I can't tell which one I am. I think I because of personal growth.
Hmm.
There you go. She
Could
said
be.
this.
If you're a very positive person and outgoing, usually high eyes tend to be very, their body, like body gestures are loud. Like, when somebody's a high eye because they'll light up the room. So
Ah,
yeah,
yeah, high energy, right?
yeah, yep, exactly.
Teresa said, this is the best explanation I have ever heard about disc.
Thank you, thank you.
Look at that. Right? This is why I wanted to have him on. I mean, it was not just talking about like sub two and deals. Like I wanted like something
Yeah,
different, and Rof's the person for that.
yeah, do
Uh,
meat and potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Daniel's on. I love it. Dan the man's on. Al, you're the man. I love it. You're the man. Teresa, conversation simplified. No need for fluff. Love it. And Shelly, there she is. Great information. Thanks. You see, this is why I
Thank
wanted
you,
you on.
everybody.
It's a totally different topic. You're a completely different guest with this, but you're doing deals, you're closing deals, and you're killing it. I mean, I love seeing what you're doing. Raf, I can't wait to see you again. I can't wait to have fun like we always do at the events. I do a segment at the end of my show. It's called Final Words, Final Thoughts. It's anything we may have covered that you really want to enhance, or you want to dive deeper, or just say a few words on something that's going on you really want to dive deep on. But I do this at the end of my show. It's your moment. Final words, final thoughts. Rafael Cortez.
I think the procrastination is going to kill every dream out there, and I'm passionate about this in particular, right? We can't have it all laid out. We can't have it all figured out before we take that first step. A lot of times we our dreams go to die before they even get started. There's a quote that I feel like I live by. And it's by Paulo Coelho, and it's, "I refuse to walk carefully through life only to arrive safely at my death." The first time I heard that, it resonated, so much with the need, right, to have everything figured out and not take action, not move forward, not take risks, and take that extra step forward, not to trust, and have faith, right? Faith in everything, faith in in our maker, faith in you, faith in the industry and the people around you. It's so easy to be skeptic about everything, right? But living in this ball of skepticism is not gonna move the needle. It's really not. We have to put ourselves out there. Like, that's a reality of it. We have to put ourselves out there. We have to be loud about whatever it is that we're passionate about. We have to be loud about whatever it is, talent it is that we can bring and improve somebody else's life. So be loud, get out there, and stay focused, because you got this.
I love it. We're going to leave it right there. Rafael Cortez, everybody. I mean, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for dropping the psychology nuggets, things that we can really take away when it comes to deals and stuff. And by the way, where can people learn more about psychology and all this kind of stuff?
Well, if you want to get a hold of me, I'm pretty active on social media. At Rafael Cortez CEO. I also have a YouTube channel, which is also Rafael Cortez CEO. But I have a podcast, the CEO Pulse podcast, and I have a Mindset Monday series on there that we break. I mean, we just go heavy into mindset every single Monday. I have a ton of episodes in there. Talk about mindset, psychology, entrepreneurship, business strategies, of course, real estate, wholesaling, and the whole 9 yards. So
I love it. Love seeing you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll see you soon, man.
Love you.
Love you too. All right, everybody, another episode on the Al Nicoletti Show, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Thank you all so much for dropping comments, interacting, and I hope you really enjoyed that episode with Rafael Cortez, because he dropped so many gems when it comes to understanding psychology and how it relates to real estate and sales, closing, negotiations, you name it. If you missed any of that, you got to go back, watch it, and then scan the QR code. That's the link tree. You'll have all the social links, whether Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. And we will see you all next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you guys so much. Can't wait. See you then. Have a great night.